Hi, I'm Zelna, founder of the Kids Life Studio. And if truth be told, this is probably the fifth retake of trying to start this training masterclass today. I'm here today to speak to you on the topic of why quitting isn't always a failure. And I kept starting and stopping and starting and stopping, just not getting it perfect because I couldn't get my message across. So I took a deep breath. I practice some of the tools that we give to the children that we coach as kids life coaches. And I said to myself, I'm going to pop straight back in and share authentically, openly, and honestly about something that makes me feel very vulnerable. So thank you for sharing time with me today on this topic for this masterclass on why quitting isn't always a failure. So I need to backtrack a little. If we go back to the pandemic in 2020, I realized that I really, really struggled. I struggled in the pandemic. It was really a tough time for me. We had incredibly hectic lockdowns in England. My husband and I were housebound. We learned things about ourselves that I didn't know were possible after so many years of marriage. I learned things about me. I learned things about my clients because I had to work online. And whilst in the lockdown, I started asking myself a question that if I was struggling the way I was, what were parents doing in terms of supporting and leading the children that they needed to look after their children? How were they going to look after their well-being? If I was unable to cope with all the tools, all the resources, knowing about neuroscience and psychology, and I really had a dysregulated nervous system during lockdown. It just went absolutely haywire. I started asking this question. And that really inspired me to go back to university. In my mid-40s, I joined a university in Cambridge in England, and I did my master's degree in clinical child psychology. And this started this most amazing adventure for me. It was tough because I was the oldest student by about 20 years in my class with lots of young psychology students. I hadn't followed a traditional background into psychology. I came from a special needs background. I was an early career school teacher. I was a lecturer at university, but when it came to psychology, I was pretty much self-taught. But I had portfolio of evidence and a track record of the work that I'd been doing, training and certifying kids life coaches around the world to show that I was able to enter this course with life experience as well as the academic experience from my previous degrees, of which I had two. So, long story short, when I was doing this degree, I started asking even more questions. I started asking, why is it that young people are labeled with mental illness and with labels such as autism, ADHD, and there's an alphabet soup of them, when very often these labels manifest as a result of trauma that they'd faced. And during lockdown, my research that I did was to approach 12-year-olds around the world and to speak to them with regards to what went well for them during lockdown. And these were children from so-called stable families that had to fit a certain criteria. There was no divorce present. There were no previous indications of mental illness, functioning adequately academically from an upper demographic. So everything was stacked for them. They had positive childhood experiences as opposed to adverse childhood experiences. And as I was speaking to these young people, I started seeing a pattern. And some of these young people were being diagnosed all of a sudden after COVID with ADHD and being on the spectrum. And I started wondering what was going on there. And so my interest was piqued even more. Alongside this, I saw the young psychology students who had just come out of their undergrad degree, so inexperienced when it came to understanding the psychology of childhood. And perhaps that's you. If you're watching this video and you're thinking of becoming a kids life coach, or maybe you already are a certified kids life coach and you don't feel you have enough experience, that's why I believe young people Maybe you're not young, maybe you started your training middle-aged like I did, but people need to have mentorship and support. And so I realized that there was this gap in the psychology curriculum that I was part of. And so this ignited my enthusiasm to further my studies and to further research the topic of complex trauma and how I believe young people are born intuitively resilient, and that kids' life coaching and play-based methods are a way to bring young people back into their natural state of being where they can cope with stress. So that's a mouthful. So I submitted this proposal to a few universities. I was turned down by a few, but one accepted me. And it found me on the adventure of a lifetime in October 2022. I started as a DPhil, a doctoral student in psychiatry at Oxford University in England. A dream come true, right? I was so privileged. My husband and I did not realize when I put the application in that part of the criteria for being a student, a full-time student at Oxford, was for us to pack up our home and move to Oxford. So we packed everything up and we moved across to Oxford, took this huge risk where I was asked to only work 10 hours a week. So I had to cut down the work that I was doing and that I loved doing with all of you. I cut that down because I was concentrating on my research as a doctoral student. And I really, really went there with such enthusiasm, such wonderful energy, but things didn't work out the way I thought they would. And I was faced with one obstacle after the next, everything from a murder in our streets to a forced home invasion in our flat in Oxford, to poor health of my own, to poor health of my husband, to family incidents. If anything could go wrong, that was my year for it going wrong. I don't know what the universe was sending my way, but I really had a tough time. But during this time at Oxford, I not only learned a lot about complex trauma and the underlying aspects of labels like narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder and bipolar. I also started seeing what was missing and the gaps that there were. And the reason I was seeing those was because, just like in COVID, when I was faced by obstacle after obstacle, my life also started unraveling as a student at Oxford. And I wasn't able to perform to maximum, so I lost a little bit of time as a student, but I caught up very quickly. But it just never, ever went back to the way it was when I started because of that little hiccup. And after 2 years of trying my best, and for me, my best is good enough. I'm a hardworking, articulate, really, I would say, a resilient individual who's willing to overcome anything when it comes to contributing to the well-being of children. I wasn't doing this doctoral degree as an almost 50-year-old. I'm 50 now. I turned 50 just the other day, but I wasn't doing this doctoral degree for the sake of myself. Yes, it's an accolade and it is something that was on my bucket list. I know that sounds a bit shallow, but it was something I really wanted to do and achieve for myself. Coming from the background I came from, where I'd experienced complex trauma myself, I found that being in the psychiatry department at Oxford was just one of the most amazing things that happened to me. I learned so much. I learned also about what academia is and what it isn't. Most of all, what I discovered was that the kids' life coaching program that I'd put together in 2003, and I've trained people around the world to use, was not only solid, but based on clinical scientific evidence that I hadn't even known about. I had known it was evidence informed. When I set up the coaching program, I did it because of my research initially, but I became really, really excited as to the good work that we were doing. Now, going back, and I know this was long-winded, so thank you for sticking with me if you're still with me now. Why am I sharing all of this with you? Well, I quit university. Yes, I did, but not for the reasons you're thinking. Most people think that quitting is a failure. And I used to think that, being a high achiever, a high performer, somebody who values perfection in many ways, I have come to realize that progress sometimes and the lessons we learn along the way are more important than the actual accolade at the end of it. So let's speak about why I quit and why sometimes it is okay to quit and why it isn't a failure. I had to process this because this was one of the biggest opportunities in my life. But what I found being at Oxford was that I had to really suppress the true essence of me. I was only allowed to work 10 hours a week according to university contract. So I wasn't doing the things that I love doing, teaching, mentoring, coaching, engaging in the work, my play-based coaching work that I've been doing for 2 decades. And it left me feeling empty and hollow. And I noticed that things in the Kids Life studio weren't quite functioning the way they used to. And I was really missing it. So I started thinking about why I was doing this degree. And when I started having challenges with finding a supervisor that had the experience to work with me in a qualitative study, because I was studying coping, resilience, and well-being, and looking at how to break the cycle of intergenerational trauma, mostly through nature-based and play-based approaches, I wasn't able to find a supervisor in the psychiatry department that had those expertise. I was told to go to another department, which made me realize that perhaps I was planted in the psychiatry department to see just how much work still needs to be done in prevention rather than cure. So today, as I sit here, I have officially put down my tools as a student and I'm stepping back full time into my role as the founder of the Kids Life Studio. And I couldn't be more excited. You know, I had to process this and it's been a very big decision to make. But I believe that if a doctorate degree is something that suppresses my true essence, or in the case of you, if you are doing something that is suppressing your true essence of who you are and what your purpose is and what you're meant to do, and it becomes too difficult and it's too much of a struggle, there are growth opportunities, but there comes a time where you have to realize you need to down tools and step into your power and move in a different direction. So that's what I'm doing today. And I don't know what's going to come of this. And it's just coincidental that today's mastermind topic, which was allocated months in advance, happened to be just as I'm finalizing, releasing myself from Oxford University. Now, what have I gained? I've gained 2 years of being part of a world-class university, one of the best universities in the world. I have met the most amazing students, the most amazing, amazing lecturers, the most amazing professors. I have had the opportunity to engage in research work of my own and in others' research work. I have been part of conversations that I never would have. So as I quit, it's not that I'm quitting on myself. I'm quitting on the fact that I believe I was never designed to be a traditional academic. I'm a deconstructed academic. I love academia. I love journal papers. I love research. But what I love more is what I've been doing for most of my life, being on the ground, practical, inspirational training that gets results. Maybe it's because I'm impatient and sitting for 4 to 6 years behind my computer and hammering away at my keyboard for a few supervisors or examiners to read my thesis and then to possibly get it published. I don't know, that just wasn't sitting well for me. I have a few more books in me, and my research of the past 2 years has led to those books being consolidated. So they are there waiting in the side wings, ready to meet the world. So I want to say thank you for sharing this time with me, because this isn't something easy for me to admit. Quitting is never easy to admit, but I believe that right now, my quitting is not a failure. So let's translate this to young people, the people that you coach as a kid's life coach. When is quitting a failure and when isn't it? Now, I have my own personal example that I can share with my future coachees, and I will openly and willingly share my academic struggles and how I really enjoyed the autonomy that I have running my own organization, and then going into an environment where I was being told what to do and how to do it and when to do it and what was wrong and what was right. It was really difficult for me. And I think that's going to be a superpower for me now. Alongside this, I now understand the science behind complex trauma. And there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but we're on the right track. So I'm going to be able to share that with my coachees. So I want you to think of a time where you may have quit on something and where you may have thought you were a failure. And maybe it's your kids' life coach training. Maybe it's your kids' life coaching practice where it's become too hard and you just don't want to do it anymore. I believe that inherently we have this wonderful sense of intuition where we are able to discern for ourselves, not cognitively, but intuitively, through our past experiences, what is the right pathway for us? And if we can get our coachees to tap into that, they can then start discerning for themselves when the right time is to give up and move in a new direction, and when the time is to persevere. Now, I'm not giving up on my research. I'm still researching. I'm just not doing it as a formal student. I'm researching for my book writing. As a coach, it's important for you to view something like this, which is considered quitting or giving up, as something that is a learning opportunity. It's not always a failure. If I had gone in and not tried my best, if I had gone in and not engaged in my opportunity, that would be a failure. And I think this translates so beautifully into our coaching sessions, where we need to encourage young people to try things and to feel what it feels like to have the power to say what's right for them and what's wrong for them, and to quit with an informed decision. I didn't just do this overnight. So your takeaways as a coach, right? And whether you're coaching full-time or not, whether you're considering becoming a student, whether you have quit your coaching practice, it doesn't matter. I want you to think to yourself, how can you impact on children as a children's change maker by being a good role model, which shows that quitting is only an option if you give up and recalibrate. I haven't given up and gone, I'm not doing any of this ever again. I love researching. I love writing. I love evidence. I love science. I'm a scientist at heart. But I've recalibrated, and I'm going to be investing that time and that energy and that passion that I've always had and that I lost over the 2 years that I was at Oxford. I lost that spark. I lost that ability because of what was happening and all the traumas and all the obstacles. I lost that spark for my purpose. And if that's you, maybe it's time to quit something in your life, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a business partnership. I don't know. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But what I am telling you to do is to feel okay with the fact that sometimes quitting is okay. It's not a failure. So whatever your message and your takeaway is from today, I feel better having shared this with you. I am now free as a bird. I don't have any more extra time because I'm now investing my time into my writing, but I feel so fulfilled and I'm flourishing again. I'm not suppressing the true essence of who I am as a children's change maker and a global advocate for children's well-being around the world. Since 2003, I've been in the fortunate position to pioneer kids' life coaching, and I will continue to do so. And the kids' life coaching industry is taking off so beautifully, and I want to maintain the fact that I've worked hard alongside our team to make our coaching ethical and sustainable and world-class, so that the young coachees that are in our care feel safe in winning and quitting. And that when they do choose to quit, they don't see it as a failure, but they see it as a boost to their confidence that they stood up for them. And that's what I did for me. So thank you for your understanding. I'd love any feedback that you have. I'll pop my details in the information section. Take a look down there, make contact with me. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, but I really do wish you well as a kids life coach, as a children's change maker. Go out there, quit if you need to, but keep on going if it means something to you in your hearts.